Hello, welcome back to my haunted library. It's Regina. I hope you had a lovely Halloween. I'm still recovering. I have a little bit of a Halloween hangover. So only because I did a lot for Halloween. I went to a lot of parties and it just seemed the entire month was fun. And not to mention, Matilda got into some trouble, but hopefully she's on the mend. Anyway, I hope you had a lovely time. And I'm kind of excited now that we're into November because this is the slide into the holidays, and it's a good time to get some cozy reading done. So I feel very accomplished that I finished another book, and that's Hell House by Richard Matheson. I hope it's Matheson and not Matheson. I don't know. I always say Matheson. He also wrote I Am Legend and a lot of other classics. I had a bit of a block that I psychoanalyzed about why I took me so long to pick up this book. And that's because when I was a kid, my dad, who was a very avid reader, took us to see, dropped us off at the movie theater so we could see the movie The Other, which came out around the same time. And I was really little, probably too small to be seeing horror films, but he dropped us off because he really loved the book The Other. He's really the reason why we, in my family, we all became avid readers, just because he read all the time, and he read all kinds of stuff, history. We always had National Geographics and encyclopedias and that kind of stuff, but he also loved to read horror fiction. And The Other, which I really love, I read probably a few years later, but he really wanted us to see this movie because I think he just wanted to have someone to talk to about it because he loved it so much, or just he thought it was a little more intellectual than the kind of stuff that we liked. But it was in a double feature with The Legend of Hell House, which was the bloodiest and probably the most sexual film I'd ever been exposed to at that time. You know, it was pretty risque, not as risque as the book, but pretty risque for a kid. And when he picked us up at the movie theater and we were driving home, all we could talk about was Hell House. And I remember he got very, he didn't yell at us, but he kind of shamed us by saying, I thought you would really be into The Other. That was the more highbrow work. And I mean, he didn't really know because he hadn't seen Hell House, but just the name Hell House didn't really sound that good. And I felt very ashamed. And I think we rode home all quiet, embarrassed because we liked Hell House more than The Other. I really loved The Other too, but yeah, this was the bloody one. This was the fun one. And this is the one we talked about. So that was my block, I think, is that I was a little ashamed about reading the book. I might be completely wrong. I don't know. Because I have seen The Legend of Hell House since then, and I rewatched it. It's very good. The book is very good. It's not as explicit as the book, but it is also very good, and I watched it again. So now I've seen it 3 times. And I love Rowdy McDowell, who plays the medium, one of the mediums, and Pamela, what's her name? Pamela Franklin, who plays the little girl in The Innocents, and she also plays the snitch, the assassin in The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie with Maggie Smith, which is a great movie. Not horror, but still a great movie. Anyway, this book, this story, which I might have a few spoilers. I don't really do very good book reviews, guys. I call them discussions, so which people have called me out about calling them reviews. So I'm not going to use that word anymore because they're right. I don't really do straight up book reviews. I talk about a book. I talk about my feelings about the book. I go off on tangents. If you want a straight up book review, there are plenty of places to find that. But yeah, so what is this story about? Well, there's an old house, a haunted house in Maine. Belasco was this kind of Aleister Crowley type of character, notorious libertine who had orgies and all kinds of debauchery at this mansion. And consequently, a lot of people died there, and it's just filled with all this really negative paranormal energy. And this millionaire, who is not probably on his last leg, hires a few people to try to discover the secret of Hell House and if there's a way of going beyond the grave. He probably wants to know because he's about to find the grave. So he hires a scientist and 2 mediums. Okay, and the scientist also has his wife. So they are to spend a week in this place called Hell House. Well, that's what it's called. You know, it's the Belasco house, this mansion. And if they can survive it and maybe discover some of its secrets. So that's the setup. We've seen this setup before. It's a classic setup. A kind of, I guess, was Shirley Jackson's The Haunting of Hill House the original? I don't know. Let me know in the comments below if there was one before Hill House that's kind of the setup of people have to go into the haunted house and they have to survive. I read 12 Days at Rotterhouse just recently that had that setup, kind of did its own twist on it. Flesh Gothic by Edward Lee is definitely an homage to especially Hill House. There's one part in Flesh Gothic where a crazed woman in the middle of an orgy is doing something really disturbing with a severed arm. There is a severed hand doing something very disturbing in Hell House. That wasn't in the film. I think if I had seen that in the film when I was a little kid, I would have really been traumatized, and not in a good way. But this book is pretty explicit. Anyway, so the people go into the house. They're going to get paid a lot of money if they can spend the week without leaving. So you have the scientific method of trying to figure out what's going on. This man called Barrett, Dr. Lionel Barrett, and his wife Edith. He has a machine that he's created. It's like his life's work. It's called the reverser. And what it does, it reverses the energies inside the house in a very scientific way. So when there is paranormal activity, it's explained as scientific energy. And all you have to do is reverse that energy with electric magnetism and all this kind of science, and the house will be clear of ghost. Well, the two mediums, one's a mental medium, one's a physical medium. I mean, they experience things differently, are dealing more with paranormal experience. So it's pretty fascinating. What I liked about the story is it really takes time to develop the characters and them exploring the house. Very interesting. As time goes on, there are paranormal attacks, one with a cat, one with a severed arm, some sexually explicit scenes that are pretty harrowing. There is the idea with the repressed wife of the scientist and I love her in the movie. She's very glamorous in the movie. She's a little austere, but once the house starts working on her, the hair comes down, the negligee goes on, and she's running around trying to seduce Roddy McDowall, who plays Fisher, the other medium. And I love him. The cast is really good. So I definitely loved both the book and the movie. Highly recommend. I'll give this one 5 stars. The movie has a very 70s feel, very atmospheric, really moody, lots of mist, and really good and kind of creepy, you know. It made me definitely reflect on some of my own paranormal experiences, which I have mentioned in some of my videos. I did a video about the Black Bass Inn years ago when I started my channel. I'll try to hook it up somewhere here. That's one of the only times, there have been a few times where I've had paranormal experiences, but this time where I really felt the presence of a ghost later. And I didn't know it before, but later I did find out that it is a documented haunted location. I'll try to find a link that explains it a little more, but I definitely felt a presence and I can't really say saw it. It was kind of like feel and see at the same time. If you've ever had it, you'll kind of know what I'm talking about. I definitely felt a change in temperature. It got very cold. This presence to me was very negative and very, very scary. And I wasn't staying at the hotel. We were shooting a film there, and I was working on the crew, and we were there shooting by ourselves. And the owner gave us a key to the inn, which was very cool. And it was about 4:00 in the morning, and I had to get some rest. So I went to a different part of the inn, and that's when I saw or felt, or both, this presence. I knew at once it was a female ghost too, and it turns out I was right. I just knew it. If you've ever had those experiences, they're hard to describe, but you know it when you experience it, definitely. And I've been in some houses, like my house is very old, but I've never felt any kind of presence in there, which is good because I don't think I would want to stay in a place like that. My sister was telling me she has a house in, it's like a vacation home, which is really lovely in Washington State. And I was staying there. We were staying there last summer, and I did feel a kind of a weirdness on the where we were staying, which was like on the downstairs, it's sort of like a suite. There was this one room, and I went into the room, and of course I was like, oh, you know what, I should come here, and for a couple weeks and write my novel. I could stay in this room, and then I was like, no, I felt like a cold creepiness, like no, I wouldn't, I couldn't do anything in this room. And I remember, and it was like a little, my sister had set it up like this little like writing room. It was really sweet looking, but as soon as I walked in there, I got a creepy feeling. And then my other sister was staying there just recently, and she said that she was cooking dinner in their kitchen, and it's a really lovely house. She said that a couple pans flew off like they had the pans hanging up while she was cooking dinner. Like they didn't just fall, they flew off across the room. And then my sister's husband, he's a scientist, he's not somebody who gets into this stuff too much, told a creepy story that happened to him and that I'll share, that happened to him inside the house. He said he was there alone one weekend and the electricity went out, and he was carrying a lighted candle up the stairs, and he said it was like someone went like this and blew out the candle. Like he heard the sound of someone blowing out the candle and felt the wind. I got to get the whole story from him about what happened, but my point is that there are places, you can believe or not believe. Those of us who have experienced it, we're the believers, I guess, but I understand when people are very skeptical. I wouldn't believe it myself if I hadn't experienced it. There are places that have this kind of presence, and you can look at it scientifically or look at it like a spiritual thing, but it's definitely there, or else we just have very active imaginations and we like to make up stories. I'll leave that for you to judge, but let me know in the comments below if you've ever read Hell House or have seen the film The Legend of Hell House. If you've ever had a paranormal experience, I would love to hear your thoughts. So that's all I have for today. Thanks for stopping by my haunted library, and I'll see you soon. Bye!